maybe I'm starting to overcompensate this way a little bit, because I've even started wondering how important is stylistic choices in your martial arts. Because I used to not care. I went through a stage where I was like, doesn't matter. And then I realized that that's not even true. And it's never been true. We talk about these standards and this efficiency. I'm like, I think you should try to like look good while you do it. And I think it'd be cool if you had your own little flavor while you did it. Even if it's in the ring on TV for money, I still think that you should have some flair.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio. On today's episode, I'm joined by Icy Mike. We went on a journey together before we even got here. And
Don't tell them. It's embarrassing.
No, I'm not going to tell them what happened. I'm not even going to tell them what happened. We're just going to let them wonder.
I know that it happens to lots of guys, but that's never. I promise. I do this all the time. That never happens to me.
I really hope we don't tell them. I want to leave them in complete suspense.
Oh gosh, that's embarrassing.
Hey, if that's the worst thing that happens to you today, you're doing great. I truly mean that. See, audience, right? We're like 4 seconds in, and you're getting it. This is going to be a fun one. I can tell. I can read the tea leaves here. So if you're new to Whistlekick, go to whistlekick.com. See all the things that we do: the events, the books, the products, the apparel, the digital products, all that good stuff. But whistlekickmartialartsradio.com is where you want to go for everything related to this show. If you want the transcript, if you want the show notes, if you want Mike's socials, like all that stuff's going to be there. So check it out. And thanks. But yeah, here we are. We're here. I'm glad I didn't wear my black camo today. I actually just wore it like 2 days ago. Like I could go get it and we could match. Yeah, I mean we've got the hairstyle going.
Yep, the hairstyle of wisdom.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I tell people that
when you possess a lot of wisdom, it pushes the hair out.
Well, it cooks, right? The brain runs hot, and the hair follicles just can't do it. And it cooks them off.
Temperature issue. I'd always attribute it to pressure, like physical pressure, but maybe temperature is it.
It's probably both. It very well could be both. I don't think it is going to accept our advice on anything related to medicine or health, or
they shouldn't.
How hair follicles operate.
Shouldn't. That's an interesting thing. That's pretty common in martial arts, where people listen to a dude about like stuff that they got no business listening to him about. And guys get their black belt in martial arts or whatever, and then suddenly they're giving people like advice on college and dating, and people are listening, and they're like, "Oh, here's what you need to do for that injury or for that rash," and you're like listening to this guy. Like, why did people do that?
I think a lot of it is that we end up in these groupings where we're used to listening to the person in the front of the room on so many things. And then we say, well, what do you... Now, admittedly, my students will ask me certain things about certain injuries. And I'm talking about this is what happened to me. This is how I busted up my arm, my elbow. Here's what worked for me. But I will usually preface it with, I'm not a doctor, so don't listen to anything I say, but here's what I did.
Yeah. That's 101, you would think. But it's funny you said, when I was at the academy, when I was at the police academy, I had trouble. I kept thinking of the guy who was our class president, right? Like he was in the academy. He was a student just like me. Okay. And he was the class they made him class president for the time we were in the academy. Okay. In my brain, I was like, oh, he's like a supervisor when he gets out of the academy. He's been a cop for 3 minutes. This is just the same as everybody else. He just was in charge in school. And I was like, yeah, he's like going to be like a sergeant or whatever. Like I wasn't in my brain. I just thought when we finished, I would still be like, need to take orders from that guy. It's just madness.
Human beings like hierarchy. We like to know how we slot in to any kind of social structure. I think that for a lot of people, I think that's part of what they like about rank and belts in a martial arts school. It's okay, I know that I'm supposed to line up between this person, and I'm in this row.
Yeah. Actually, we introduced a belt system into RKM kickboxing. We just don't have the physical belts. But there's belts.
Oh, did you?
They're just like mental belts.
Okay.
And I just have like a list of of criteria and like the standards for each belt, and then I just tell
Mental
you, yeah,
belts.
you're a red belt. That's basically
Okay.
like a red belt.
And do they accept that?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. And there are guys that didn't come up. So I train mostly combat athletes with
Okay.
no traditional martial arts background. And I came from a traditional martial arts background into the combat world, combat sport world. So
Mm,
I thought in belts, and I thought that by this time at this belt, you needed to be able to do this thing. And that's how I thought.
mm,
And no one in the combat sport world doesn't really think that way. They're like, well,
right.
performance, like, how do you perform? Like, we don't need belt tests because we have tests. We have real
Right. It,
tests.
it's all results driven.
Right. Yeah. There's no questions. It's not theoretical. And I was like, yeah, but there are techniques and there are things that you can know or not know that you may or may not have success with. Like, there are guys who have success in combat sports doing things that are wrong. Sometimes they need to do those things wrong to have success. Sometimes they could fix that and it not mess up what they're doing. But I created the belt system mostly for me. That was
Yeah.
mostly for me. And every once in a while, someone would ask me, "Hey, coach, am I a blue belt yet?" And I'd be like, and I would look at my list and I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, cool." And he's like, "Oh, great." And then we'd go on about our business and never mention it again.
So that list. So what I'm hearing probably models more like an academic environment.
It's more. I can pull
I'm
some.
curious. Yeah,
I've
this
got
is,
yeah.
and here's why. While you're looking that up and
I've
to the
never.
audience,
By the way,
yeah.
Jeremy, I've never talked about it on the channel. I've never posted in social media. This would be considered a scoop.
Here we are. Here we are. 10 minutes in, and we're busting walls here.
But
I
you know what I
think
have to do now?
what's that?
I have
Oh,
to look
you got to put the
nerdy and
glass.
old
I think
to
in a
get your.
lot of martial arts contexts, process of it changing. I think enough people see this might not be the best way for me to run my program, right? You brought it in a bit of an unconventional sense. You saw some value, but not the value in doing it the way everybody else does it. So you're putting your own spin on it. And I see a lot of schools doing that right now, and I find that really interesting.
Yeah, the term "throw the baby out with the bathwater." Like we say, "Hey, we don't need belts, we don't need bowing, we don't need gis, we don't need none of that stuff." And I'm like, "No, you don't. You need objective standards. That would be useful. You would need ways to measure whether or not you're doing certain things well. Like, that would be useful. You need a little bit of decorum and
Mm-hmm.
organization in your school. That would be useful. Like, I was far more strict about class start times. Uh, when we call an end to the drill and I say bring it in, they have to turn and immediately. Because when I took traditional martial arts, that's what we did. Like, they said stop, you stopped. They
Mm-hmm.
said go, you went. And in the combat sport gyms that I've trained at, it's sort of just more laissez-faire. But but I liked the idea that I could know what a person needed to do to get to the next step and have a list of things. So I have, like, it's white, yellow, blue, red, brown, black.
Mm-hmm.
And a blue belt would be a good place to start. A blue belt is the first belt. Red belt would be ready for competition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, red belt, I'd be like, you should fight. The blue belt would be considered intermediate, and in the kickboxing, that was only 6 to 12 months. And I think that's part of the reason why I didn't give physical belts, because a lot of these belts are measured in months,
Mm-hmm.
which is harkens back to my Cook Wan days where you could go from white to yellow in 3 months and
Mm-hmm.
yellow to blue in 6 months. And it's like, that's crazy. And I was like, well, look what I'm measuring. And these are things that you could get in 12 months. Because black belt, what does black belt mean? Black belt just means, yeah, you basically got it. Black belt doesn't mean expert. It means you basically got it in most martial arts. Brazilian
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu aside, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that black belt denotes a higher level of expertise than a lot of the traditional martial arts, where people have the conception that black belt means master. And it's like, no, I'm a pretty basic. I have a first degree black belt. That means I'm level 1 if this were a video game. I
Mm-hmm.
could, like, start fighting the first bad guy today.
Right.
So a blue belt was only, you only needed to be 6 to 12 months.
Mm.
And what I was looking for, I had technical, strategic, there were technical requirements, strategic requirements, training habit requirements, and then social requirements. There was always a
Mm.
social component to each belt, because it
Okay.
was a hierarchy. So, like, for instance, blue, which would be considered intermediate, the title would be. Since we didn't have Japanese honorifics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we use American honorifics. This would be athlete. This would be when I start referring to you as an athlete.
Okay.
And so the technical, you should possess a handful of specials. So to get a yellow belt, you have to know jab, cross, hook, uppercut, overhand. Probably we get started on one of those. Round kicks, straight kicks, knees, head movement, blocking, footwork. You would need all that. You need to be able to demonstrate how to do that in a vacuum as to get a yellow belt. Blue, you should have all those things and then also be able to execute some special stuff like a 2 or 3, maybe 4 turning back kick, a flying knee, anything spinning, anything turning, anything with deception. A question mark kick would be the beginning of that thing. You'd need to be into those techniques to get a blue belt. Gazelle punch, a leaping hook. And you'd have to be able to control a lesser skilled partner's movement through footwork and feints for most of a round. So that's the key. Since we're talking about a combat sports system, the real requirement of the belt, the technical requirement of the belt is like, dude, you could probably teach somebody that stuff in a couple weeks. The strategic requirement is the real requirement that tells me you're a blue belt, which means you're one step away from being able to fight somebody. If we have a round of sparring where I give you no instructions and your opponent is less skilled than you are, you should be able to control their movement through just your footwork and feints for the majority of that round, for 51% of that round or more. So if we have a 2-minute round and we measured up control time, if you're better than me, you should be able to move me around for a minute of that without hitting me and be able to decide, do I circle left? Do I circle right? Once they can choose which way their partner circles, whether their partner goes forward or backwards, for the majority of a round, I would consider them a blue belt.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's specifically against a lower skilled opponent, because that's easy objective measure. Like if they're not as good, like if it's a newer guy, you should be able to do that. Yep. And when we get into evenly skilled, you got 2 blue belts sparring each other, and it's like, well, what's supposed to happen? I was like, it's not supposed to be good. It's not going to be good. It'll either be really good or really bad, but they'll both be both, is how it should be. I also had training habits, and they had to maintain certain habits during training, as far as dropping hands, as far as excessive breaks, as far as, interruptions, and the training habit to be considered a blue belt, which, Jeremy, what's your martial art background?
I'm all over the place. Call me a karate guy.
Oh gosh, maybe you can help me then, because I picked up a term called Zanshin. All right, a Japanese term called Zanshin, and I don't know whether I'm using it correctly. One of your viewers might.
How do you spell it?
Zanshin. Zanshin, and basically it's the focus is how I use it. I use that term to describe a presence and focus, as in you don't mentally or physically reset. You have an exchange, pop, 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 and then you go.
I'm gonna double check something before I.
Zanshin was the idea that you go bop, 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 stay locked in, bop, stay locked in, block, parry, kick, stay locked in, and you stay locked in through most of your rounds while training without having to be reminded. And we came up. I started using that term Zanshin. I found it in I don't know, maybe a karate book or maybe a samurai, something about samurais or something like that in my nerdy
into
endeavors.
Terminology.
Yeah.
But for me, that term is active meditation.
Yeah.
Is the best way that I was brought up to understand that concept.
I forget what the literal translation of it,
I'm
but
getting words here like awareness.
Yeah, I want like
relaxed
I want
alertness.
You to be really here, really doing this thing, really present, and not needing to come out of it.
Yeah.
So when I read about what Zanshin meant, like figuratively, I started using it as a term in fighting, because I said, well, if you're trying to like actively be present with what you're focused on, I don't know that there's a rule that can't be like a physical thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're running, people that run achieve that really run, I mean, long distances, they are meditating.
Absolutely.
You have to be. There's no way you can get that far. No. I don't believe that there's a rule that you can't consciously choose that state of mind during a physical or even a stressful, violent pastime. Focus. It's we're all looking to achieve flow state anyway. That's what we're eventually looking for when you're
Yeah.
fighting, or even if you're just doing forms, even if you're just hitting the bag, you're looking for flow state. You can't force that, but I don't think that there's a rule that you can't push your mind to it. And I
I,
think that gets you closer to
I would
finding it.
agree. I think anybody who's been in an intense setting, whether that's combative training or otherwise, once adrenaline kicks in and we become hyper focused, right? If you've got enough practice in that hyper focus, that adrenaline fueled state, you can start to modify it. And I've been there enough. I'm adrenaline when I'm in an adrenalized state. Anyway, when
Adrenalized.
adrenaline is up, adrenalized. There we go. Thank you for the word. When I'm there, I've been there enough because of training that I'm actually really comfortable in that place.
Yeah.
Things fall away. I'm able to kind of hijack that physiological process and dial in. And I think that's
Well,
what you're
it's
talking
from
about.
the exposure. If you were an animal, so one thing that modern civilized humans don't understand is how very rarely we are consciously aware that we are in danger.
Mm,
Whereas animals and creatures in the wild, they're like, I'm always in danger. I don't know where
yeah,
my food's coming from, and something's trying to kill me at all times.
for sure.
The adrenaline was given to us as a tool to use in these situations. Our problem is it's like a drug, and we're
Hmm.
it's like and if you're not exposed to it and you're not used to it and you can't handle your liquor and you get it, you lose yourself in it. But you're absolutely right. That practice that you've had means now that's a useful tool and not something that's giving me the shakes and making my fine motor skills dissipate. You can practice being in that state. So that Zanshin idea came from my like do it anyway, stare into it. Is a bit of like maybe exposure therapy would be
Mm,
another way to describe it. Like you must remain present. You may not check out. I didn't want people to check out, breathe, whatever during training because I didn't want them to do that during a fight when we want them applying pressure to the person the entire time or dealing with what that person is trying to do to
mm,
them, which could be dangerous. The consequences could be that they get hurt. Um, and then there are social requirements for each belt. So to get a blue belt, and the blue belt, I also called it the glue belt because like my main blue belt, I called him the glue. Uh, there was a social aspect to this, and blue was
mm,
important because a blue belt can encourage or provide very basic cornering. He can say hands up and he can move and he can say them at appropriate times with the appropriate intention. And then he has begun to ask strategic questions of his coaches and instructors. He's begun to ask them questions like, "How do I get a guy to come to me?" Right?
mm,
That's a strategic question uh, or a tactical question. And he no longer asks a ton of technical questions,
mhm,
and he can answer technical questions of others. Like he knows when he jabs, where the shoulder is supposed to be and all that stuff. He doesn't have too many of those types of questions anymore on old techniques. So there
sure.
was technical considerations which are very very unimportant to me because none of our guys fight the same. Uh,
Yep.
Strategic considerations which are the most important, like what can he do to a person, and then training habits, and then strategic ability were the two big qualifiers. I could forgive some points on the social, but not a lot. That was important. That was important for culture because
Mm,
the culture of the gym was so important to me. I didn't. We were exclusive. Like we weren't just like anyone couldn't just come in and train. Like
mhm.
that's not the way it works. Um, and now it's even more so. Like I basically only work one on one with select people, and I rarely run open classes other than in seminar format.
Why? Why
Why?
the one-on-one format? Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I prefer. I prefer the seminar format. Like I enjoy doing the seminar format, but as far as the fighters, um, uh, I'm only working with them one on one, because I no longer I don't want to sell memberships anymore. you know,
Mm, okay.
I'm no longer interested in selling gym memberships, so I gave up the gym and just do the one on one training now.
All right. Now, on the on, we're gonna go back. We're gonna talk about the history that led to creating these standards. You know, I guess your history that led you to a point where I can hear in what you're doing. This is something that's really took a lot of thought. There's a lot of intention there. What was it you saw in your environments where you said, I want these standards laid out this way? Because the way you're laying it out is closer to what I would consider academic standards or athletic standards, and not at all the way most martial arts progression standards are, even if what is there in most martial arts schools really is designed to reflect what you've got. Your method seems, I'm not going to call it better, but it does seem more intentional towards a specific goal.
Yes. Well, I think it. I don't. I think if that's your goal, if your goal is to be good at these things that I'm teaching, I think that this method is better. If your goals don't align with, if you're not preparing, this is what I'll say. This is when I know my system is better. When my system is best, I'll go ahead and brag. I have the best system if
Okay, please.
I have the absolute best system if you are a kickboxer and I am your coach and we are going to go fight in a kickboxing fight.
Mm,
I have the best system. If you're my fighter and I'm your coach and we're going in there, this is the best system. It's not a one size fits all thing, though. There are plenty of people that this system is not correct for.
right.
But why did I do this? I saw in my traditional martial arts background, I grew up in a strip mall, McDojo, learning Kuk Sool,
Mm,
um, and it had a very strict belt system with lists of techniques that you had to know. Everybody in the room was a certain belt. Everybody in the room, their belt made sense to me. Every single person. It's like he is a yellow belt. He is a red belt. Those guys are definitely black belts. Now, the stuff that we were learning wouldn't help us fight our way out of a paper bag. We were learning interpretive dance. Technically, I achieved a good bit of
mm,
technical ability and maybe some athleticism and just physical training, but how to fight a person strategically and tactically, we learned none of, zero of. Not 1 second was spent on the actual way to make a person do what you want.
mm,
But everything that they did teach, we learned it and we learned it well. And everybody knew what the standards were. Everyone could repeat them. Everyone could help other people meet them. It was just very clear. Uh, And then when I went into the combat sport world, it was just everybody did whatever they felt like doing.
mm,
And people were their own coach. They picked their own training partners. They picked their own training times. They didn't listen to any advice during camp. They didn't listen to any advice during the fight.
mm,
Everybody just did whatever they want. And then everyone just sort of shrugged and threw their hands up like, hey, it's a fight game. Who knows? I was like, that's not true. That's not true. You can know. And at the highest levels of sport, they know who's winning, and it's the same guys winning over and over again. It's not like, hey, I'm really lucky and I just guess all the time. They know if I do this, my opponent will do that, and if they're doing this and we do this, that won't work, or it will. They know these things within a reasonable level of certainty, but you can't determine what those things are without objective standards. So we created objective standards, and we win the fights.
mm,
We win the fights. Now, I don't think I could take a it's specifically a internal system and standards. That's why I don't give the physical belts. That's why I told them when I give them to them, hey, this means nothing. This is just so you know what we need to know, because I thought it was important for them to know
Mm-hmm.
what I need from them, and it was important for me to know what they were capable of. And that's the only part about the belt system that I cared about. That's why the belts are months long. I just need to know where you're at and let you know where you're at and let you know what you need to improve on.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to measure it. What gets measured gets improved, so to speak.
Yes. So what I'm hearing is you took a traditional methodology and just reverse engineered the goal from the goal, a different goal, and backfilled, okay, what needs to happen to get to here?
Exactly that.
Which, I mean,
Jeremy,
that's,
Jeremy, Jeremy, it's exactly that, because I started with the goal. What do you want? You
yeah.
want we need to win this fight. Okay, how do we do that? And then what parts of that can we control and measure? Which is quite a lot. Quite a lot can be controlled and measured.
With what you have now for these standards, is this what you came up with initially, or has it changed over time?
Um, I I have rethought some things, but it was always it's always been in here. I've always
Mm,
known that about these guys. Like, I know, yeah, he's ready. Yeah, he's ready to fight. And they know it. If you look at the way belts are given in a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu programs, they're given sort of like informally and subjectively.
mhm,
Some places have testing and standards, and you have to be able to do certain things. But that art is so varied. Like, two athletes can look completely different.
mhm,
So, you know, maybe I don't know how to do a certain move, but if a guy's tapping everybody out, who cares if he knows how to do this particular move? So that's not how they're usually given. They're usually just given out when the coach just thinks you are a blue belt. He just gives you one. Like, yeah, no, you're pretty much a blue belt. Um, I think what I found is the halfway point between those two things.
mm,
So the ideas were always up here, and I have made some changes. And actually, the biggest change I made was um, trying to come up with the technical requirements, like when the jab, the cross, the hook, and like the actual, like, how to know how to do a move. It was
mhm,
difficult for me to break that down because and I used to not pay much attention to that. Um, because it didn't matter, because by the end of your first year, we're trying to figure out whether you're going to fight or not, and you'll definitely have gotten those techniques by then. But I was doing a little bit of a disservice to the technique. I spent a long time focusing only on technique, found out that I was going to get my ass kicked. So I overcorrected to be like, screw it, results only, results only. Who cares? Who cares?
mm,
Like, I cared so little about technique because I was looking at guys winning, and getting paid to win with horrible technique. And I was like, that's never the issue. That's never the issue. So I didn't focus on it at all. Like,
mm,
and I would have guys who were like, I have guys like winning belts that I realized don't know embarrassingly basic things about punches. Like very, very basic, like up to and including how to make a fist. And I realized that they're getting belts wrapped around their waist. And I've never said, hey, show me your fist. And
mm,
so I've sort of tried to bring it back to the middle of the road. But the ideas were always up in here, and they were always, for me, the biggest challenge has been like getting those rather subjective ideas in my head about, yeah, you're pretty aggressive, but sometimes you get a little lazy, if things aren't going your way.
mhm,
That's so subjective. It took me time to get it into a way that I could communicate it to others. That's been the largest change, because it was
mm.
always like, no, that guy sucks. He can't fight. That guy's good. Yeah, let's get him a fight. So I just sort of found objective standards for it.
Yeah. And has this guided the way you teach?
Yes, yes. Maybe even for the. I don't know whether it's better or worse. I care about very little in each session, like very little. I'll care about one thing, like, are your hands up? And we'll train for an hour, and I don't care what you do. I don't care how your punches look. I don't really care what's going on. We're training some very specific we're training one thing specifically, but it'll be a broad idea.
Yep.
So I won't care much about details, and I've become a lot less detail oriented in the way I teach. which is that I enjoy seminars very much because of that, because I'm teaching a big room full of people. I don't have time to teach them little minutia and make sure everybody's thumb is turned the exact right way when they kick. But I can get them all to like understand a little range game, a more basic idea. So when I teach now, I don't care about minutia. And that also, as I'm saying it out loud, and thank you for the therapy right now, Jeremy. I just worked this out in my head. I just realized, oh no, that was also because I, by that point, had enough assistant coaches and assistant instructors and higher level people that I very rarely had to make those corrections, because part of the requirements is that you have to also be a coach. Mm-hmm. So when you're learning, when you are at 12 months, I should be able to give you a guy who has 3 months, and you should bring him up to 6 months, and you learn how to do that while you're learning. So as I'm like, why did I stop? I haven't taught a jab in 6 years. I haven't taught anyone how to throw a jab.
You haven't needed to.
I haven't like had a person and I'm like, here's how you do this move. And I was like, I was like, I don't do that anymore. That's terrible. And I realized, no, I have other people doing it for me now. Mm. So thank you for that. I need to write that down. That's why it's okay.
Efficiency, right?
Yeah.
Efficiency is a good thing. All right. So I want to go back and this is not, and I want to make sure, because you don't know me. This is not me disagreeing, but I want to explore the subject. You referred to your original school as a McDojo. And what was it about that school that you're looking at? Is it just in hindsight that you're drawing that label, or was it something you were aware of in the midst of?
So when I say McDojo, let's first define that, because my friend Rob uses a very different definition of the term McDojo.
You're talking about Rob Ingram?
McDojo Life.
Yeah.
McDojo
Rob was
Life,
on the show forever ago. Rob was on the show forever ago.
Yeah, when he says McDojo, he means something very, very awful and evil that, he's usually talking about bad stuff. Mm-hmm. When I say McDojo, I mean a chain of places that don't teach people how to fight but do charge money for martial arts lessons.
Okay.
And that's pretty much all I mean by it when I say McDojo. It means that they charged you and they didn't teach you how to fight. And there's a bunch of them. That's it.
Okay.
I don't even use that term for like a mom and pop thing. It's if you're part of a large organization or affiliation, and it's like a chain or like a franchise or that sort of thing, mm-hmm. and you don't teach people how to fight, I use the term McDojo. So that would be why that place. I think, I mean, obviously, so I think I gleaned tremendous value from my time there. So I don't begrudge anyone that trains in martial arts that don't teach you how to fight. I think it's fine. Lately, I've noticed a push amongst Aikido practitioners. There's a sect of Aikido practitioners that pretends to admit that they know that it's not teaching them how to fight. Like in the split, like Aikido doesn't work, and people are like, Aikido definitely works. There's now this new challenger that's like, no, Aikido doesn't work. We know that, but we still like doing it.
There's another group of Aikidoka who would agree, and they've said, but did we miss something? Is there something if we go back that makes it more practical? We've had a couple of those folks.
I skipped that group. Yeah, there's that group. There's the let's modernize combat Aikido, modern Aikido, those sort of types of things. That's an excellent point. But yeah, there's also people that's just like, I like doing it, which I think is fine. But I think some of them are lying.
It depends on why people train, right? Your why, just as you talked about with your standards, your why should, and I've said this for a long time, your why should dictate everything you do leading up to it. If you're training to learn how to fight, your program better teach you how to fight. Right. If you're training because you want community and fitness and everything, well, then how you train should be different.
Right. But Jeremy, I don't know, man. I don't know if I buy that one from the Aikido guys, man. Every time I read it in the comment section, every time I read it, I'm like, I don't believe
that. Might be your problem.
I don't believe you.
If you're if you're working from comments on anything,
Oh, I'm a resident of the internet. I live on the internet.
yeah,
That's the
it's you know
that's when I go to town. When I say, "Hey, I'm going to town," you know how some people go to town to resupply, or they go to work, like they
yeah
go to the
yeah.
bank or wherever they work at. Like when I go into the world, it's the internet. I'm like, I'm going into the internet. That's my world. So yeah, maybe that is the problem. But it's the same. You know what I equate it to? When women
Hmm.
see a guy and he's like jacked, you know, like 8 pack,
Hmm.
flat pecs, just, you know,
Yeah.
looks great. And invariably you'll hear a woman say, I don't know, I don't really like, I don't, those muscles don't do anything for me. I don't like that. I don't like that. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. You might love your husband and he might be sexy to you, but I think you kind of like that a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it's just objectively, like it looks good. I think with Aikido, I think the guys are just pretending. I think they still kind of think it would work. Any guy that says, "No, I don't practice," I know that it will not. I know that it will help me zero. I don't think you'll get them to say it. Be like, it'll help you zero. It'll have zero help. And they'll tell you, well, no, I mean, you learn a little bit about it. And it's like, see, I got you.
Well, here, uh,
I know.
when people say it will work or it would work, right? That doesn't always necessarily refer to the same thing.
Here it goes. Move those goalposts for me, Jeremy. Move them. It'll help me. Aikido will help me fall, right? Because you got knocked the fuck out. So you're good at falling down automatically. I kid. Break falling is important. Body awareness is important. I think having a good time and training with people is important.
Mm-hmm.
I like to give Aikido a ton of shit, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think them boys really do think they know how to fight.
I can tell. Uh, so I here's the question: how many Aikido schools have you hung out in?
How many Aikido schools have I hung out in?
Yeah,
Zero.
I,
Zero
I would
Aikido
I
schools.
would encourage you to do so.
I've tried. I tried, Jeremy. I tried to hang out in Aikido school.
You tried once.
I did try once.
You tried one time and it
I
didn't
did.
work.
I
Try
did
again.
try once.
Try again. What would your students say? What would you tell your students if they tried to do something one time and it didn't work?
I'd be like, "Oh, it's what was wrong with it?" And they'd be like, "Oh, it sucked." And I was like, "Oh, okay." That's what I tell them. No, I tried to actually answer this. This guy ran an ad. This was weird. This guy ran an ad on Facebook, like a like a paid ad. He paid to
Mhm.
run an advertisement inviting Joe Rogan to his Aikido school to prove that Aikido worked.
All right, that's not the school you got to go to, though. Come
That is
on.
definitely, Jeremy, that is the school
No.
I need to go to. I need to go to that school. He ran a paid ad, and I was like, saying, I challenge Joe Rogan to come to my school and to prove Aikido is real, you know? And I replied to the ad, said, yo, I ain't no Joe Rogan, but I'll be a huckleberry, you know? And I was like, I have some ideas of things we could do. And he lost his mind. And
Sure.
he said people were sending him like death threats and stuff. Like I think the
Sure.
internet. I think he did not live on the internet before he did that. Like, okay, so your reaction when I told you a guy ran a paid ad challenging Joe Rogan to come check out his Aikido school, right? And instantly you go to like, what? like, like
That's
what?
just silly. It's
Right.
silly.
So this guy didn't know that. He thought that it was a perfectly reasonable, like, I know, I've got a great idea. He's like, I got a great idea. Dude, this will be huge. I've had ideas like that one. I've made videos before that I thought were great ideas and then found out like, oh, what did I think would happen? This guy lost his mind. He said, there's going to be if you come here, there's going to be no cameras and I can't guarantee your safety. And I was like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I was like, I thought we were going to like make a video about it. Like,
So there's selection bias there, right? Like you're already saying this person might not be
oh yeah, he
stable,
was an idiot for
but
sure.
there are like I've got.
Oh, you broke up. You froze up there. You froze up.
If you found, just as in anything, right? Whether we're talking about martial arts or music or car mechanics, you've got bell curve distribution. And if you're looking at the extremes, you can justify whatever point you want, but you gotta
Yep.
look more in the middle. And I'm
Oh,
sure and where do you live?
Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Okay,
Do I gotta?
so
Do I gotta, Jeremy?
you don't have to. You
Do I
don't have
gotta
to,
look in the
but
middle?
I think you should.
Ah,
I
but
think you should.
do you know
And
how good it
here's what I'm
feels?
hoping.
Do you know how good it feels to get one example that confirms what you already think? Do you know how good that feels?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're a resident of the internet, that's pretty much how everything works. But if you want to know the truth about anything, then you can't just take one example that was
I
selected
can't.
out of confirmation bias.
All right. So what do I gotta do?
I think you should find an open-minded Aikido school and collaborate and say, I want to better understand what you do. And I
Oh,
will
you think I
all but
don't understand what Aikido does? I know what Aikido does.
time.
Oh, oh man, Jeremy, it keeps freezing up.
Yeah. I think Riverside's having an issue. I'm watching the numbers on the side, and everything suggests that it's going to look fine in the recording later. But it is hanging us up here, and if you know, we'll just we're there's nothing I can change. I'm watching all my settings. There's nothing going on that I can track down on my end, and it doesn't look like it's anything on your end either. So we're going to blame Riverside and just keep plowing ahead.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, man, I could check. I mean, I would. I've never been opposed to practicing or training Aikido. It's been difficult for me now. The way that collaborations occur now at this stage in my career is
Sure.
much more like friendly and amicable. It's not always like a dojo storm situation like that one was. That was very early. That was when I was still utilizing Facebook on social media, which is
Yeah.
no longer the case. But that was very early. The I think the biggest issue why I haven't done much Aikido content now is, to my knowledge, I didn't. There's not a lot about it that I think. I don't think there's too many questions about it. I really don't. I think that Aikido puzzle has been solved. Do you think that there's something in Aikido that is still yet to be, understood by the greater martial arts community? Like, do you still think there's some gems in Aikido that we could mine from it?
I don't know because I don't know Aikido super well, but I
Oh my
know.
God, Jeremy,
But
you've been
here,
talking like Aikido's your brother, man. You've
no,
been acting
no.
like Aikido, dude. You really are style agnostic,
But
man.
here's why I think it's worth exploring because there are Aikido practitioners out there who went through a similar perspective that you and admittedly many others have. And instead of saying, I'm not going to do Aikido, they said, how could I do Aikido?
Yeah. I know those
And I
dudes.
find that to be fascinating. And so I think if you hooked up with one of those people
Oh,
and
I've
did
done.
some training,
Oh, what you're describing is martial arts journeys content formula for the longest
okay.
time. Like, and I've collaborated with Rokas. Rokas is a friend of mine.
Oh, Rokus is awesome.
Yeah, Rokas is a friend of mine, and we've done many videos and many talks and many discussions about Aikido.
Okay. Okay.
I've noticed, and again, it's anecdotal and subjective. I don't hear much talk about Aikido anymore, and I think it's because we finally put that one to bed. I think it really is. Jeremy, I don't think there's anything left, and then there are hills for you, buddy. I think it's sorted out. I think that there's a few neckbeards out there that swear that they're still gonna flip somebody or break their wrist. And if this was real Aikido, if we were really in the wherever Aikido came from, is it the desert? Really in the deserts of Aikido land? Where's Aikido? Japan?
Japanese.
What do they got?
Mainland Japan.
Japanese.
The desert?
The deserts of Aikido.
Is that why you think they wear hakama? Is to keep the sand out of their shorts?
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense.
All right.
That makes total sense to me.
Hey,
In the
you heard it
desert, you
here
want
last.
voluminous clothing. I don't know. I've never been to Japan. I'd assume there's at least a desert there, right? There's like a desert everywhere, right?
I, I don't know why I'm looking at my map as if from
I don't
here I'm
think
going to be
that's
able to
true.
spot the
I think
desert.
that's such an American, like America. What's in America? Oh, we got mountains, deserts, valleys, rivers, lakes, tundras, oceans. You know, like plains,
Yeah,
rivers. We got everything. I just
yeah.
think of other countries like, oh, where's your beach at? It's like we don't have a beach.
They got a lot of beaches in Japan. It's a lot of coastline there.
But I can drive 2 hours to a beach, 2 hours to a mountain, 2 hours to a desert. I like in America. I just assume that every other country has everything. Anyway, I don't know whether Aikido comes from the deserts or the mountains. Seems mountainy. Aikido seems like a mountain thing. I don't
Let's
think it's a jungle thing. I definitely know Aikido doesn't come from a jungle. No one's wanted. You're not doing break falls in a jungle. Like no one wants to do break falls in a jungle.
what if what if the difference between Aikido as it's practiced now in schools that you don't like and the difference to making it effective was the use of vines.
What
What
if
if it
it's the
was
jungle?
jungle,
What if
right?
it's geographic? Oh, that's what they say. That's what them dudes. Who are them dudes? Who are these dudes?
I need more. Was that capoeira? I'm not sure what that was.
Who are those dudes that fight like that?
Was that capoeira?
No, not capoeira. No. That's. I'm talking about the guys that
Yeah.
like the guys that like fight like that fight like low. They fight and they were fighting in water. They're fighting in like the rice fields. Is
I've
that Silat? I think it's Silat.
okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's Silat.
Pencak silat. How do you pronounce that?
They a lot of times with martial arts they'll say, "Oh, it was meant for." They'll move the goalpost. You know, it was meant for horseback. Like it was meant for mountainous terrain. It was meant for, they'll tell you about what it was meant for. And I'm like, nah, the good stuff works everywhere, homie. Head position. Head position is good no matter where you are. Head
Sure.
position is good.
Sure. All right. So here's the question. If we go back to your early foray into martial arts, at some point you got exposed to something that was not Kuk Sool Won. So what was that? How did your mind start to shift?
It started with, I want to say I was a teenager or something, and we did some stick fighting.
Mm.
But we just did full contact stick fighting with no coach or trainer or anything. We were LARPing essentially in the woods, but it was full contact, just no headshots. And
Okay.
you lost if you quit. And I did that a couple of times, and it was really tough.
Yeah.
It was really hard. And then we did some boxing. We did some backyard boxing. Put gloves on with friends. We did some of that, and I was getting my ass kicked a good bit more than I felt like I should. I was very, very small,
Mm.
very, very little, much smaller than all my friends. But I thought with my martial arts training that I should be at least doing better than what I was doing. I was a
Mm.
little confused about why I wasn't working so well. Because technically speaking, I threw good strikes, but strategically I just couldn't. I was like, why isn't any of this working?
Mm.
And the guy, who the guys who would always whoop everyone's ass? The dudes who were just good athletes, who were just good at other stuff. Guys who were good at baseball or good at football or good at tennis. Just guys who were good at stuff were good at fighting. So a little bit of boxing with friends. And then what really kicked it over for me is the first time I ever couldn't subdue someone through wrestling on duty as a police officer.
Mm.
Like I was a cop. I was trying
How
to
old are
arrest
you?
this
How
guy.
old are you at that point?
28.
Okay.
28 years old. I'd done Kuksuwan. I'd boxed. I'd done Japanese jiu-jitsu. I'd done a lot of other things. I dabbled in a bunch of other stuff. And I had
Mm.
been working dudes over. I'd worked security at clubs. I had worked as a police officer for a long time. I did plenty of related stuff and had some success, but I'd had success with dudes that had no training, didn't know how to fight, and also dudes that maybe weren't dead set on hurting me. It was more like a tussle rather than real fights for the most part.
Mm.
Most of the times, especially like as a police officer, when you're like fighting with someone, they're usually trying to get away from you, not hurt you back. So techniques that would work, like things you could get away with. Like you could be if a guy's just trying to get away from you, wrestling him's pretty easy because he's only trying to do one thing. If he were wrestling you back, you have to think about it a lot more. Anyway, I tried to wrestle this guy and it didn't go well. And he was smaller than me and he wasn't trying very hard. And then at one point we got him into handcuffs and then he was still really difficult to manage. And I knew enough about what he was doing from the way he moved his hips because he kind of hip tossed me a little bit
Mm-hmm.
at one point, and I said, "Yo, did you wrestle?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "In college?" And he was like, "Nah, just high school, just 2 years in high school." And I was like, "Dang," because he was pretty good, and I knew enough about grappling. I'd done Japanese jiu-jitsu. We did ground fighting in every martial arts school that I'd been a part of. So I knew what he was doing, but he was just so much better at it. And I was like, dude, you wrestled in high school for 2 years? And then I like started watching video of wrestling. And then I watched UFC and I knew about wrestling and I knew it was part of MMA. Um, but then I started really like deep diving into the wrestling side of it. And I was like, oh God. And from a physical standpoint, the way that wrestling is trained is the way to make um, high performance athletes. Just the methods, the physical training methods.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Can you be more specific for people who don't know what those are?
so like the way that wrestling is trained, you wrestle. It's hard. It's hard the whole time. They'll show you techniques, they'll show you moves, they'll show you how to put it there, but then you wrestle. The
Mm-hmm.
coaches are just walking around the room screaming, wrestle, wrestle, wrestle. It's hard training. They do slow it down like in a traditional martial arts school. In a traditional martial arts school, we'd probably start with you start with crawl, walk, run,
Mm-hmm.
stand this way, do this way. In grappling, a lot of the times the way they teach you is they'll tell you a little bit like, yeah, try to stay on top, wrestle, you know, and then they see what happens and then they make some corrections. There's also technical training, but the majority of the training time, they show you a move and then they'll make corrections, but it's while you're trying to do it to a person.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do cooperative drills. They'll be a little bit flowy, but they'll be hard. And then very quickly within a wrestling program, you will get into live. You'll go live, and they do that a lot, a lot, a lot. And they're wrestling so much that they just become really tough, really durable, mentally strong, physically strong. This guy only did it for 2 years and gave me a ton of problems, and he wasn't trying very hard. And that was concerning for me because I was like, what if he did? If that guy tried really hard, he would hold me down. That kid could have held me down, done anything he wanted to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I immediately was like, I need to learn how to wrestle. So I kind of threw myself into that for quite a while. I never got good at it, but I wanted to understand it.
Okay. All right. And so that was that's the epiphany moment. And then what did you, other than observing and spending some time practicing wrestling, what else did that lead to? It sounds like that was the okay, if this, then also this, and this.
Yeah, that definitely kicked off a lot more because that's what led me to go to MMA because there's for an adult who didn't wrestle, there's no real avenue to just go wrestle people. Well, there is some of them you can make some pretty good money, but there's not a real place for an adult to just go wrestle people for fun, except for an MMA school.
Mm,
And so that eventually got me into an MMA school. And I'd done partial arts. I'd done all the partial arts. I'd done boxing, all the striking arts I'd
mm,
done for a long time. Right. But the grappling was new to me. I thought it was not. That's the big thing. I thought that grappling was not new to me because of the
mm,
grappling done uh, in every other martial arts school that I was in, including the Japanese jiu-jitsu school. I was like, okay, yeah, hip tosses, body locks, arm bars, sweeps, trips, throws. This is grappling. But no one screamed at you, go, 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 and you just go. So it was like all theoretical. There
mm,
was very little live training in most of the places like that I trained at. So I thought I knew how to grapple. I found out I could not. So I go into the MMA gym thinking I'm hot shit because I'm been doing martial arts since I was 11. And a guy that's been there like 6 months dribbles me like a basketball up and down the mat, showing off for his girlfriend, tying me into a pretzel over and over and over again, tapping me as many times as he wants. And so I was like, wow, I didn't know how to grapple, but I thought I did. That led me to, from that point forward, I had this like um, really strong filter for pretty much the next 10 years that anything that I was looking at or anything I thought about martial arts or fighting, it was wrong. I
mm.
looked through that lens for probably the next 10 years. I just assumed that everything that I ever thought was wrong, and that really sharpened. And that's kind of how, and Hard to Hurt was happening during all that time. So like I began Hard to Hurt sort of after my epiphany, and my uh, became a born again MMA advocate. You know, like I was like, I got firmly in the camp of MMA training is currently the best training for learning how to fight a person.
Mm-hmm.
I settled on that. Started Hard to Hurt and be like, this is the best way to train how to fight people, this way that they're doing it. And I was like, except we should make some changes. There's some little things that should be different. I think I can explain it better than maybe some of these, you know, ex-pro fighters who sometimes have difficulty explaining things. I thought I could explain it a little better. And then I learned that between the traditional martial arts world and the modern mixed martial arts world, there was not a lot of overlap in the way that classes were done. And that was strange to me because I would watch in the MMA gym, they would teach punches and kicks, arm bars, takedowns, what have you. And they would give technical details. And they'd say, you got to do like this, you got to do like this, you got to do like this. Now go. And they'd be like, no, that's not right. Do it this way. Go. Perfect. No, that's not right. Do it this way. Go. Perfect. And they say, great. And they do all that same stuff in the traditional martial arts school. They teach you the technique, they show it to you, they ask you to try it, then they make corrections. Nope, that's not right. Try it like this. Go. Perfect. 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 They both do that. And then the next step is where it all changes. Because in the MMA school, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, boxing gym, Muay Thai school, the next point is say, okay, now go try to do it on that person. And they're not going to let you. And this school never did that. These schools never did that. Or if they did, it was very, very constrained. It was like point sparring, or it was restricted sparring, or it was positional sparring. It was a lot of that. The problem was these guys are not getting better at what they're doing at the same rate that these guys are doing. These guys are getting better at martial arts faster. It's just their martial art isn't good at fighting people. These guys' martial art is good at fighting people, but they're not getting good at it fast. So that's what sort of led to the over the past few years, me sort of adjusting my standards, or more codifying them, and figuring out that there is a halfway point between those two things where you can have objective standards, a clear curriculum, and be able to measure whether or not a student is doing it. And then it can also be, you can also be teaching them things that allow them to win fights, if that's what they want to do, is win fights. It's very similar with the self-defense curriculum that I use. The difficulty with the self-defense curriculum, it's a little harder to prove that track record.
Yep.
It's a little harder to explain that to people in a shorthand. It's a little harder for people to get on board with knowing. If I tell you, no, don't do that because he's going to do this, people don't necessarily believe that that's going to be the case, because it'd be more difficult to find footage of it. Whereas with combat sport training, I don't even need to find footage of, hey, if you drop your hands, you're going to get hit, because the guy knows if he drops his hands, he's going to get hit. He has plenty of firsthand knowledge of that.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the life story. It was a big overcorrection. I became MMA gym bro, and that's all I cared about. And now I've come hopefully back to the middle. Maybe I'm starting to overcompensate this way a little bit, because I've even started wondering how important is stylistic choices in your martial arts. Because I used to not care. I went through a stage where I was like, doesn't matter. And then I realized that that's not even true. And it's never been true. We talk about these standards and this efficiency. I'm like, I think you should try to like look good while you do it. And I think it'd be cool if you had your own little flavor while you did it, even if it's in the ring on TV for money. I still think that you should have some flair. So I maybe it's the age, maybe my later years, I'm becoming either overly analytical, or maybe just I'm going soft. But I still kind of think
It
I used
gives
to say,
people another reason to train. It gives them another thing to think about, another lens through which to analyze, which keeps the brain moving. And if someone's been training a long time, that can be really exciting to add that level of refinement, and it keeps them progressing. That makes complete sense to me.
And maybe too, maybe I'm thinking more this way because because physically, because I can't do all the things that I used to do. So from a
Mm,
technical standpoint, I can't do certain moves that I could do before, and from a effectiveness standpoint, I can't really. I stopped fighting a long time ago, but I enjoy sparring and training with the boys, but I don't really compete with them anymore. They are very they're very kind to me, you know. Um, so like stylistically, like making it look cool. Maybe that's another reason why I might be looking more towards that. But I don't mind a little style when my fighters want to throw some of that in there when they want to do something just because it looks cool. I'm like, if it doesn't interfere with anything and it makes you feel good,
sure.
yeah, if you feel good, you'll fight good.
I can get behind that. That makes sense. What
The
what prompted the channel? Why start the channel? Why start?
I was in the MMA gym,
Yeah.
hearing everything the guys were saying, and I was like, "Yep, okay, cool, sounds good. Yeah, no, checks out." I was looking through this lens of all this is wrong. I looked through the lens at my instructors, like everything that they were like. I was overly critical
Mm-hmm.
compared to the average new student. I kept all of it to myself. I never said anything, never said a word because I wasn't sure. Because not only was I not sure that what they were doing was right, that lens also applied to me. I was like, I don't know. This guy, I mean, he's been a pro fighter. He's fought over the world. This is probably how they do it. Yeah, that's how they do it. And I'd look, check out another gym, and I'd be like, oh, that's how they do it. Oh, this is how they do it everywhere. Boxing gyms. Oh, boxing gyms are crazy. They like fight each other. Like sparring is fighting in boxing gym. They spar really hard. And then I looked at schools where they barely touch each other in sparring. And then I looked at schools in the middle, and then I was like, okay, it's kind of different. It's all over the place. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. And all that I decided with the YouTube channel was like, I think that I could explain some of these ideas a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could explain these ideas a little bit better because I was so critical and I struggled with a lot of the things that they were trying to say to me, and I really tried to do them, like ideas and concepts from as simple as keeping your hands up to as complicated as range management. Like, is that broad? Specifically, keeping your hands up, broad range management. These ideas, I saw that I struggled to do them, and most people struggle to do them.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that no one in traditional martial arts struggled to perform techniques that their bodies were physically capable of.
Mm-hmm.
If you can throw your kick, I can teach you the kick. You can't, like, I just can't throw this. I just can't throw this kick. So why can we make sure that anyone can learn the kick, but not anyone can learn to keep their hands up? It didn't make any sense. So I thought maybe I can explain things better.
Mm-hmm.
I have the gift of gab, and I can explain it better. And that's all I originally set out to do, was to explain it better than your coach. And what's funny is I never got any feedback about that. That's always been my theme. Like, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to explain it better than your coach to you specifically. Not even always a knock on the coach. In the beginning, I kind of knocked coaches a little bit, and I still do quite often just for fun. I just think it's funny. Even without knocking the coach, like, hey, maybe if he's a 24-year-old surfer that smokes weed every day, but is really good at fighting and can show you a sick armbar, cool, right? But if you're like, I don't understand why every time I throw my left hook, this happens, I just don't understand why. And he's like, oh, bro, you just got to keep trying. He doesn't have anything useful. So I started Hard to Hurt to try to find useful ways to explain it to people who maybe had a little bit more time and energy and maybe were a little more interested in finding out why things were difficult or how to do things better. That's strictly how I started. And then it's kind of, it still is that.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while I do a video where I say we're going to return to form. But I think I've uncovered each of the topics as far as I can, as far as that. Like, why does your hook suck? I did that video. How to do your head movement? I did that video. And that was it. It was basically, I just shared the thing. Hey, I had trouble with this thing, and then I thought about it this way, and now it's better. And that was the original intent of the channel. And it was solely, and I wanted to do gear reviews. I always wanted to review stuff. I was like, play with stuff, and that too. But from the martial arts standpoint, it was strictly just to explain things better than that person's teacher may have explained it.
And that makes sense. It sounds like there's a lot of value there, and it was because of that channel, of course, that ultimately you ended up here. We got some good recommendations.
I know. Look how far I've come. I'm on whistlekick, Mom. My
Hey
mom
man,
watches everything I do.
Does she? That's awesome.
I don't think she does anymore.
Oh,
I don't think she
there's
does.
too much. There's too much content. Mom's checked out.
That's
Mom's
not it.
like,
I don't think she does anymore.
well, if she does, hi, mom. If let's make sure we mention this here. Hard to Hurt, YouTube. Are there socials or other things that you said no Facebook, but is there anything else that people should be aware of?
I'm on every social media platform as at Icy Mike P, but
Okay.
there's no content of value in those platforms. Like my Instagram is my personal Instagram. I don't mind if people follow it, but I don't, and I post seminars. So if you want to train with me, that's where, because I post the seminars and stuff, because that's me personally,
Yeah.
and the YouTube channel, the production schedule on it is that sounded sort of the way I do the YouTube channel. It wouldn't be fast enough for me to promote the seminars and stuff on it.
I get it.
You get it. It's the same
it.
thing with what you do. So there's never any point in me talking about it in the YouTube channel, and I want it to be evergreen. I don't want to bog my viewers down in 2 years with some, hey, I'm going to be in such and such. So on Instagram is where I post all my seminars and things where you could train with me. But YouTube /Hard to Hurt is my main gig.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope everybody checks that out. I think we're going to have you on again at some point to talk because you brought up a lot of topics, a lot of things that we could go down the rabbit holes on, and I want to have these conversations because you're not simply dismissive in the way that I think a lot of the martial arts criticisms on the internet are simply dismissive. It's I heard from this other person that this thing, this style, this whatever sucks and is stupid, so I'm going to repeat that. That's not you. You have awareness, and that can lead to some really good conversation. But there's only so much time that we have.
It's
available.
not so much. It's not so. I didn't land on these ideas because I think it's not because I don't think. It's not because I think everything's good. Like everything, you know how some guys are in there. Oh, everything's value. You can do. It's because I think everything sucks. I think on a long enough timeline, everything sucks. I think that helps.
I like that. I like that. There's one of my favorite lines from The Simpsons of all time. Homer's being interviewed for jury duty, and he says, "I'm prejudiced against everyone."
Yeah, yeah.
Right, and that's what I'm hearing, and you're like, everybody's everything sucks.
Oh yeah, I talk as much trash on box. Actually, I probably talk more trash about boxing and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people than anything now.
Hey, there's trash to talk about everyone, about everything.
Anybody can get it.
That's right. Audience, make sure you check out in the links and whistlekick.com for the things that we're doing
I'll
around
close it
our
out.
stuff.
Here, he'll close it out like this, Jeremy. It was my microphone wasn't working. That's what it was. My microphone wasn't working. That's embarrassing.
You were supposed to tell him, man.
It always my shit always works. It always works. I do this all the time. And Jeremy's looking at me like, bro. He's like, hey,
oh for 1 here, man.
Your computer?
0 for 1.